welcome to PBA at noon. I'm Paul Benwell, and I'm joined by my colleague Sophie Caesar. Uh, we're very excited to have back with us today Dan Weir. Dan presented with us at our 5 Set in Montreal exactly 5 years ago to the day. Today, Dan is here to tell us about his newest venture, Copper Bullet Mines. Copper Bullet Mines is a pre-IPO that boasts access to some of the top mining professionals in the world. They have identified several copper projects in the Americas, focusing on the Western United States. They have made considerable strides in advancing their holdings. They have just finished phase one of staking, growing their property from 2,500 acres to over 6,000. Here to tell us about the project and what is in the pipeline is our good friend, CEO Dan Weir, and Chairman Daryl Hodges will join us. Dan, feel free to start whenever you're ready, and we will have some questions for you at the end. Go ahead, Dan. Take care.
Well, thank you, Paul, and thank you, Sophie. And I'm glad to have Daryl joining with us as well. I am not a geologist, so if there's any questions out there when it comes to geology, Daryl is a geologist and he can answer most of those questions. I'd like to say thank you to everybody who's joined to listen to our presentation, and especially some of our shareholders who said that they were going to listen to this presentation as well. So I'm going to start our presentation here right now. If it will start. Hopefully everybody can see that here now. I also have a pointer on the screen as well that I'll be able to point out some interesting facts about our company. The company is currently a private company. We formed it about a year ago. Daryl, myself, and a couple other people got together with the idea of building another Quadra or an FNX. These are companies that were bought out a number of years ago for billions of dollars. Currently, there are some other copper companies like a Lundin or a Capstone that we want to model ourselves after. So in order to do so, our goal is to go out and make acquisitions and to that are producing near-term type producing assets, as well as this first project that we're going to talk about today called the Copper Springs project, which is an exploration play as we move forward. So I'll get right into it here. Let me see how I can move. There we go. I'll skip that. If there's anything about today, I want you to remember these few points here. We are focusing on the Americas. Our first project is in the Globe, Miami area of Arizona. 71% of the US copper is produced in Arizona. A lot of it comes from the area that I'm going to talk about here today called the Copper Triangle or the Globe, Miami area. Our first project called the Copper Springs project has had a lot of holes put into it, over 95 drill holes over the last 60 years. And it looks it has absolutely amazing potential as we move forward. We have a team of experts, not only in exploration, but actually in permitting of projects, in building projects, engineering projects, and moving copper projects forward. I'll get into some of those people as we move along. We're starting out with this first project with historical resource of about 40 million tons, grading around the 0.4%. We believe that, and even one of the reports that was written a few years ago, that there could be well over 200 million tons of this oxide material. And we'll show you here in a minute why the 43-101 technical report that we just finished about a month and a half ago could have potential upside for a very large sulfide project underneath there as well. I'm not going to talk too much today about uses of copper and demand for copper. I'll just make a couple quick points. An internal combustion engine car uses about 48 pounds of copper. And you can see here that an electric car uses about 183 pounds of copper. Your house, if you have an average house, it's about 2,100 square feet. It would have about 400 pounds of copper in it. As we move forward and get into more and more renewable energy, windmills and solar, an average windmill would have about 2,000 pounds of copper in it. If that windmill was offshore, you're looking at it that it would have about 63,000 pounds of copper. So you can see in the future here that demand for copper is increasing in a huge way. There's a number of reports out there that say by 2029, we could have a 5 million ton a year shortfall of copper. Copper's holding in here very nicely at around the $4, and today I think it's up a little bit, around $4.70. If copper remains at this level, Daryl and I will be smiling for a long time. If copper continues to increase in price, we'll be smiling even more. But at these levels, as you can see from the chart over here on the right-hand side, copper has increased dramatically over the last number of years, and we believe that that will increase. Copper deposits around the world. You see along the west coast of Canada, United States, and even South America, you get a lot of these, what they call porphyry deposits. I'm going to get into that a little bit more as we move forward. Again, we are focusing on the Western United States. We have considered and are looking at some deposits in the Western Canada, and we have considered some other nickel type assets in Ontario as well. But again, our focus is copper, and the focus is Arizona and other states in the West. Arizona, as I mentioned earlier, about 71% of the copper that is produced in the United States comes from Arizona. The flag of Arizona has basically copper in it. And they're very proud of the history of Arizona coming from copper mining. Where we are on the Copper Triangle here is about 1 hour west of Phoenix.
East.
Sorry, east, that's correct, east of Phoenix. Here's just a few facts about Arizona. Arizona is #1 in mining in the United States. About 11% of the value of minerals that are produced in the United States come from Arizona. Nevada would be #2 at about 10%. On a rating scale, and one of the reasons why we chose Arizona to start with, the Fraser Institute ranks Nevada and Arizona as the top 2 jurisdictions in the world to look at mining or invest in mining projects. The Copper Triangle, now this is really where it becomes very, very important. The term the Copper Triangle is not a term that we came up with. It was actually Rio Tinto and BHP that show this in all of their literature on their mine that they're building. They are currently building a new mine called the Resolution Mine, which, by the way, is only about 8 or 9 miles away from our project. The reason why it's a Copper Triangle, well, down in the bottom corner here, you've got the Hayden Complex. That is a smelter that is owned by Asarco. Asarco was bought by Grupo Mexico a number of years ago. To the in the other point up here to the north, you've got the whole Globe Miami area, which has Freeport-McMoRan, which again has a smelter right in the middle of here. You have other companies like BHP has other assets here. You've got right across the road from our project, and this is where our project is here. You've got the Carlotta mine, which is owned by KGHM. A lot of people don't know much about KGHM. They're the 2nd largest silver producer in the world. They're a Polish company, and they're the 7th largest copper producer in the world. Capstone Mining bought from BHP a number of years ago the Pinto Valley mine, and they're currently producing right across the road. So right across the highway, the main highway, Highway 60 that comes from Phoenix to this area, is 2 operating mines. Across the road and a little bit to the north of us you have one of only 3 smelters in the United States operated by Freeport-McMoRan. That's right, there's only 3 copper smelters left in the United States. 2 of them happen to be right in the Copper Triangle here. The Hayden complex is currently shut down. So really in the United States, there's only 2 operating smelters in the whole United States. Most of the copper smelting in the world, 50% of it comes from China. You can see here where we heavily rely now on China, even for not only rare earths, but also copper. And then a lot of the other smelting comes from either Poland, Chile, Peru, that makes up some of the other smelting that happens in the world. Canada only has 1 smelter left. It's in Rouyn-Noranda in Quebec. The Ray mine sits just south of us. Again, it's also an operating mine. You can see here some of the numbers here. The Ray mine has produced over 1 billion tons of copper. The resource there is 1 billion tons at about 0.59%. Carlotta and Pinto Valley are producing at about 0.3, 0.4%. One of the reasons why Rio Tinto and BHP is building the Resolution mine over here is they have a resource of 1.5 billion, grading 1.5%. Historically, there was a company that owned the property here. It was called Magma Copper. BHP bought it a number of years ago. Historically, and even the current mines that are in operation, they were open pit, and they did a lot of going after the oxide type layer type materials. It wasn't until about 20 or 30 years ago when some deep holes were drilled here at Resolution, when they realized that there was these massive high-grade deposits underneath here. Hence the reason why Rio Tinto and BHP are going to spend billions and billions of dollars building this project. Again, it's only 8 kilometers or 8 miles, sorry, away from where we are. So you can see here, all around us are some of the top mining companies in the world that are either in production or have been in production. One of the questions we get, people ask us, well, why didn't somebody do work here? Over the last 50 years, there have been a number of people that, like Phelps Dodge and other companies, that have come and put a few holes into our project, but it's fairly hilly. You can kind of see by the topography here. It rises up from sort of where Miami is at about 4,000 feet. It rises up to about 7,000 feet. So they went after the easy mining areas first. The other advantage we have, after we signed the deal with 3 groups, and I'm going to get into that just here in a minute, a big fire came right through this area. So when we were out there, and Daryl and I spent time out there with our geologists, it's all been burnt off. So some people would say it's awful that the whole thing burnt down. To a geologist, it's amazing to see that this has been all burnt off because now we can see the rocks. And some of the rocks that we've been able to look at have made the geologists extremely, extremely excited. Also in the area, Capstone has done a deal recently with BHP. Again, our project sits right here. The Capstone mine, or sorry, Pinto Valley mine sits right here that Capstone owns. This is the Carlotta mine. Just in January here, Capstone plans to expand their area. The area in yellow, they've done a deal with BHP to do some drilling on that, with potentially acquiring that. So there are a number of people in the area looking to acquire assets, just like we plan to acquire assets in the area as well. As I mentioned, I was able to, about a year ago, put together this original land package of 2,500 acres or 126 claims. There was 3 owners that owned this. I'm the first one in over 50 years to have been able to put this projects together. And it's been very exciting to be able to take this and then add additional land to it. So we now currently have 6,000 acres. You can see here the original outline in red, and then the new outline of our current package. we plan to increase that to well over 12,000 acres right in this area, which would make us one of the biggest land owners within the Copper Triangle. Historical resources on our property. The last one was 2010. They mentioned that there's potential there for about 90 to 200 million tons, grading around 0.4%. Again, I really want to emphasize this as well, that all the holes that they have drilled on here have been shallow holes going after a oxide layers on this property. We now, because of the fire that has burned everything off, we continue to see the potential and huge potential here that there could be some deep-seated porphyry systems sitting right underneath us. One of the slides that we're going to get into here in a minute, I will show that. But for us to be able to start with a historic resource, and I emphasize this is non-43-101, but historic resource on a property gives us a huge advantage and a huge head start over most other companies. Highlights, again, you can see some of the rock off to the side. The mineralization looks absolutely amazing. There's an old mine on our property called the Ellis Mine. Some of the rock that has come from there, or some of the samples that we took from the surface in and around there, show that, hey, this does have potential for a massive porphyry system underneath. Daryl, do you want to add anything to that?
Just to say that the Ellis mine was an adit that was drilled in or excavated into the side of the hill, and they were going after some high-grade veins, and these are some of the specimens that come out of that. And what we think is that basically what we're seeing is a upper bleeding from a bigger system down below that's come up into the Ellis system. It's related with quite a bit of faulting as well, that Dan will probably talk a little bit about later on in this area, but certainly some of this mineralization, and it's as a result of the fire that went through that we were able to get into this area and find these previously unreported high-grade veins.
Thanks, Daryl.
No problem.
Again, this is the geology in the area, and some of the, geologists get very excited at these rocks. I always say, when I pick up a rock, I look at it and say, how much money can I make from this rock? Geologists pick up the rock and say, look at all the pretty colors and things. So it's amazing that the geologists are just jumping up and down when they look at a lot of these samples here. So it's great.
Present company excluded, of course.
Yes, there you go. Daryl's, we call him a geologist. He does have a geology degree, but he worked on Bay Street for a long time. So he thinks of this as, how do we make money at it as well? Daryl, I'm going to get you to talk a little bit about this, because you can explain this a little bit better than I can.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically a summary from a historical review that was done, and it was actually just published back in January. And what it sort of speaks to here is that there are three major porphyry copper systems that are lying in this area, and you can see them diagonally across this sort of in a northeast southwest trend. And the exciting part to us, and I think this is a real take-home view here, is that two of these, the Pinto Valley system and the Miami Inspiration system, are basically the areas that Dan was showing you with the existing Carlotta, Capstone, Freeport operations on them. So those two systems are basically operating, covered in tailings, covered in processing plants and open pit mines. The third major porphyry copper system in this is Copper Springs. And we are sitting right on the nub of this, where the upper portion of the intrusive body is exposed. And this system goes much deeper, and it's covered to the east of us in that pale brown area that you can see looking at Copper Springs and Old Dominion, those two little round circles. Those are covered with some extensive sedimentary, unconsolidated sediments. So what we're sitting on is this rise of land that Dan was describing earlier, which is basically the exposure of the upper limits, we believe, of the hydrothermal veining system that was bleeding up above a porphyry system. The oxide and the supergene enriched blanket that Dan's been referring to is basically the shallow upper portions of this that have been obviously weathered and oxidized. But we believe that basically we are sitting on another very large porphyry system down below. And what we're seeing in the high-grade Ellis veins are just indications of what's below.
Yeah, so like we can't guarantee this, but potentially underneath us, there could be, we have the potential to be another resolution. So again, I'm not saying it is, I'm saying that there is the potential there to be something like that, knowing that, 8 miles away, there is a massive deposit. We have the potential to be the same thing. On our property, historically, I said that there was a number of drill holes. They also did some geophysics. Our plan over the next year is to continue to do additional geophysics over the property to really help show us where to drill the holes. We already have an idea, but the geophysics will help point to some of that. And with modern geophysics, it can also show some of the deeper potential that could be on this project. Historical drilling, as I said, from 1947 up until about 2009, there was about 95 drill holes drilled on this property. Kerr-McGee, Phelps Dodge, and a number of groups have drilled holes. Again, pretty much all of them were all shallow holes. We plan to twin some of those holes in the oxide type material, but we also plan to drill some much deeper holes to see if we can go after some of those porphyry or go after the porphyry as we just mentioned in the previous slides.
Right, and I'll just point out on this diagram down on the right side in that red blob, you'll notice that the drilling that was sort of in a linear, Dan, I don't know if you can back that up or not.
Oh, I can back up one, sorry. Yep.
Yep. What I just really want to speak to is the access into this property. And you notice all these red holes, they're more or less along a ridge line. And that was part of the problem of getting onto this property. These, as you can see, these narrow contour lines on this, again, they speak to the very rugged terrain that was on this property, making access and surveying very difficult. And in addition, when Dan was talking about the thick vegetation cover, it was covered with heavy thorns and thistles that made just moving around on the property extremely difficult. So we've kind of been the beneficiaries of this burn that's gone through. And what we'll plan to do is, now that we can get people on the ground and it's much easier to move around, we can put multiple IP surveys on the ground with much wider stations and do much deeper penetrating surveys. It's all kind of falling into place for us from that perspective. That's it. Thanks, Dan.
No problem. We mentioned all around us. It's very interesting. There is we call our project the Copper Springs project. There is east of us a group that EXM Royalties owns it. They optioned it off at one point in time to Anglo America. Anglo drilled some holes on this property, and then they put out a report and said that, hey, you know where the better property is the Copper Springs project to the west of us. And mostly because you can see here that where we are, it's not broken up as much as where it is down on this layer here. And you don't have that big layer of blanket or chalcocite blanket that lays over top of the deposit. So we're much higher in the system. Am I saying this all right?
Yeah, well, just except the one thing is that blanket that you're referring to that lies over, it's not a chalcocite blanket. It's basically just a sediment and debris cover of unconsolidated sand and gravel.
So where we are, we're up higher in the system and have a greater potential than they have next door. Currently, they right now, South 32 has done a deal with EXM Royalty, and they're doing some drilling on this property right next door to us. Daryl's been mentioning here what are our goals here for the exploration. Most of the drilling has been done up in this area. We will do some drilling in there just to bring the oxide layer or the oxide resource up to 43101 standards. But again, we want to look at some of these fault lines. Also, there has not been much drilling done out in this area called the birthday zone. You can actually, when you stand on our property, you can look up and you can see copper seeping. It's all green. You see seeps coming out of the side of the hill up here. So we definitely want to get up there and do some drilling as well as over by the Ellis mine, which is over here on the west side of the property. So, you know, as we go and do some more geophysics over the property, we'll identify exactly where we want to go to, with a goal of bringing this up to a more 43-101 compliant resource, as well as getting some deeper holes into here so that we can see if there's a big porphyry laying underneath us. Again, our plan is to focus on the United States, is to acquire additional assets. Over the last year, Daryl and I have put together bids on a number of assets, some of them producing, one of them right in this area that was a copper mine producing in this area. We also looked at another copper mine down in Chile that we bid on as well. That one wasn't as much exciting to us, but we still put a bid on it. We continue to look at other assets to bid on. There are legacy assets here by a number of big players, just like how Quadra started. Quadra started by buying an old BHP asset in Nevada called the Robinson Mine. They then grew the company from there. That is really what we want to do. But we've got this absolutely beautiful exploration play too that we want to keep working on as well. But you will see in the future, as we make additional acquisitions, that there'll be more legacy type assets that we can put back into production, or mines that are actually in production. Our original deal, we structured it over 8 years. It does not cost us a lot of money. You can see over the next couple of years, it only costs us about $70,000 a year. It's back-end loaded as we move forward. We believe that we got an amazing deal on that first 2,500 acres. The additional lands that we staked have no royalty, and we own those 100%, and there's no requirement to do expenditures on. That's another big advantage that you have when you're working in the United States on BLM land. As long as you continue to pay the $158 a year, no, sorry, $185 a year per claim, and a claim is 20.66 acres, you can keep it forever. One of our claim holders that we got the original claims from, some of the original 126 claims. They had held it in their family since 1929. So they've been paying the annual fees on 9 claims since 1929. So it's pretty amazing that they still held on to those claims. Currently, our company structure, we only have 13.4 million shares outstanding. Insiders own over 50% of that, including Daryl, myself, the board of directors, and our advisors own those shares. There's no warrants really, besides some broker warrants that helped us do some of the original financing. So really, really tight structure here. Some of the comparables out there in the market, these are all public companies. You can see range anywhere from about 31 million up to about $700 million in value that they're getting. Some of them only have historical resources, like for instance, Arizona Minerals. Some of them have no resource, you know, and they have 31 and $50 million market caps, and they have zero resource. Versus what we have, we're starting with a historical resource of 40 million tons at about 0.4%. And again, some of the reports say out there that really we're closer probably to 90 to 200 million tons, grading around that 0.4%. And we're currently valuing our company at $6.7 million. So we're currently raising some money at 50 cents. Again, I'm putting a value on our company of $6.7 to $7 million. We believe once we do the IPO or RTO and get public, that we can easily have a $25 million plus valuation as we move forward. Our goal is to do the IPO or RTO this year. We're hoping to have that all completed within 4 to 6 months. We recently hired a CFO. He has done all the financials for last year. The quarter ends March 31st here. We'll have those financials done probably about mid-April. We have hired an auditor. The auditor believes that he can have this all done, worst case scenario, by mid-May. We are hoping to have the audit all done in April. And since we completed the 43-101 technical report in January, we're basically ready to go public. And again, we have considered doing an IPO. We've considered doing RTOs with just a shell or with a CPC. We've also looked at merging with the right company if they had some good assets, copper type assets that make sense to merge with them. People make a company. I myself worked on Bay Street for over 20 years. I mentioned Quadra and FNX, the firm I worked for, GMP Securities. We did the IPOs for those companies. At one point in time, myself and my clients were some of the biggest shareholders of Quadra. That's why I know that model. I understand that model. When we did the IPO for it, I flew down. I went and saw the Robinson mine for myself. I've been to a number of mines all over the world and have looked at all these different deposits. Daryl is a geologist. He was also the CEO in Toronto called Jennings Capital. So both of us have a lot of experience at financing mining companies, have raised billions of dollars for different mining companies. Our other director on the board, Doug Harris, is a CA, and he helps us out with all the accounting side of it. But we have mining engineers, process engineers. We have guys like Robert Schaefer that are advising to us who have built mines, copper mines in Arizona. Daryl himself helped finance and help develop a copper mine in Arizona as well. We have geologists. One of our geologists was the chief geologist at the Carlotta mine, which is across the street from us. So we've been very lucky to be able to bring the right people and the right team members together to build a company. Again, we want to build a company like a Quadra or an FNX, grow through making acquisitions. Investment bankers on Bay Street like to hear that you're going out and making acquisitions and moving forward. And you also get research when they know that you're going to use them. Looks like Paul popped back up here. Are you telling me, Paul, that I need to stop talking now?
No, I hit the wrong button. but you're pretty much wrapped up, I'm assuming.
I am, yes.
All right, so Sophie, I think Sophie has some questions.
I do have a couple of questions. First of all, I want to thank you, Dan, and I want to thank you, Daryl. That, you know, to the point, we have had quite a lot of questions pop in, but this is probably one of the most comprehensive presentations we've ever had. So thank you very much. Pardon, Paul?
No, I said you've answered a lot of questions that you know we have. You covered it very well. That was an excellent presentation. Thank you very much, both of you.
Well, so thank you.
One quick question. I mean, you did knock off that, you know, you're pretty much ready to list. You're doing everything necessary to do that, and you know your path on how you plan on listing. You're looking at different avenues. But can you say when would you anticipate a listing?
So I mentioned earlier, we're hoping 4 to 6 months. We do know that there are a lot of delays. The biggest delay in getting listed nowadays are actually the provincial regulators. That takes the longest time. You know, we've already talked to the CSE if we want to get a listing. I have listed companies on the CSE, so has Daryl. We've done CPCs and RTOs and have helped with all that. The biggest delay that we see will be making sure that the regulators are all on side, and that takes the longest. So our goal is 4 to 6 months to be free, public and trading.
Okay, and so do you have any funds involved or any major shareholder interest for the financing and the IPO or RTO?
Yeah, our goal right now is to raise about $2 to $3 million. That will pay for the IPO, allows us to do some work on the property, do some geophysics, prepare where we want to do all the drill holes. Also gives us some due diligence money. It does cost money. When we did some due diligence on the mine in Chile, you know, we had to hire some local guys, and we hired Scott Jobin Bevins, who's a well-known geologist here in Canada, but it costs money to go and hire these people to do the due diligence. So having some money in our pockets makes it a lot easier. So 2 to 3 millions for us can go a long, long way. We've got committed about $600,000 of that. So if we could get about another $1.4 million in here over the next month, that would be absolutely amazing.
And I do have two other questions for you, Dan, but real quick, remind us of the terms of that financing again, please.
Yeah, it's 50 cents straight common share. Like I said, that's based on a $6.7 million current valuation of the company. And we believe as we get public, as you can see by a lot of those comparables, that the valuation should be a lot higher than that once we're up and trading.
Okay, then I just have some, I guess, geological questions. Have you done any metallurgy, and are there any byproduct credits?
Metallurgical studies were done by the previous group that held the project. So yes, that's been done. There is not a lot in some of these deposits. You can see you can get molybdenum, or sometimes you can get some silver. We're not seeing a lot of that. There is some traces of that. There is potential for that down in the deeper porphyry system, but we don't know on that part of it yet.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'll just jump in on the supergene portion that we're talking about. The what Dan was referring to as oxide. We don't expect any other byproducts. That'll be a straight copper extraction, basically based on the technological process of SXEW that would be contemplated. But as Dan said earlier, the hypogene, which is the deeper target, which is the sulfide ore body below that we believe is down there, we would expect to see some byproducts.
Okay, excellent. And then I have one last question. How deep do you think you'll have to drill to make some statement with confidence as to the size and scope of this project?
So if we look at Resolution, Resolution plans on mining somewhere between 6,000 feet and 10,000 feet. So it's deep. We obviously will drill some deep holes to see if that exists. We don't know yet how exactly deep we have to go or how deep it is. Would you say that, Daryl? That would be correct?
I would agree. And that will, well, casting back, and if people want to go back and look at the presentation, you can see those those geophysics profiles. And so those were a little bit shallower than what we're planning to do. So we'll do some deeper penetrating geophysics. So we're probably going to be looking around 1,000 feet or deeper for any of our drill holes that we put on this property.
Okay, excellent. Paul, did you have a question or two before we wrap up?
Yep, a couple of questions. Now, obviously, they don't need your property for everybody that's around you, like, for feed, because it looks like the mines that are around you are still pretty big. So that leads to the question, would you bring this to production, or would you just size it up and sell it off?
Our goal in the company, I mentioned to you, is to make acquisitions and to be a producing company. I want to build a Quadra or an FNX. I want to make that very, very clear. So we will do that by making some other acquisitions. This particular property, actually, funny you say that, is that if you look at the Carlotta mine across the road from us, it has a resource of 100 million tons. They built the leach pad for 100 million tons, but they've only put 50 million tons of ore on it, and they're running out of ore. So there actually is potential in the area for us to supply ore to some of the producing mines in the area.
A couple of things that, what about permitting? How quick can you get permits, and have you already applied for some, like to make sure that you're getting in the time frame?
That takes some time. In this area of Arizona, it does take some time to get permits. We have had chats with the Tonto Forest people and the BLM people in getting permits. I would say getting permits would take 4 to 6 months. We have not gone and put in the paperwork for those permits yet, but that will happen over the coming months.
Okay, and Daryl, a quick question for you. Like, what's the cost of drilling down there? And because you've touched on it's kind of mountainous and a little bit difficult, like to get at the property originally. So what is the cost of drilling, and is it any more difficult than other areas around you?
Yeah, we haven't pinned down some costs. We've been looking at some ballpark figures, and we're sort of Dan, you might jump in here as well, because I can't remember our last conversation, but was it sort of in the order of about $50 to $70 a meter? I think that was what we were looking at.
Actually, in the US, it's quite a bit more expensive to drill than Ontario and places in Canada. A lot more. In fact, in Ontario, I think a lot of people talk about it's about $100 a meter. In Arizona, it can be $100 a foot. So it's the US for some reason charges a lot more for drilling. To your point, asking about, is it a little bit hilly? There may be a couple spots. Most of it we can get to. There's old drill roads and stuff that we can get to fairly easily. In fact, you can basically drive right up to the property butts an interstate. So you can get right to the edge of the property very easily. There'll be a couple holes that we may even need a helicopter to bring it up, because it is fairly steep. But a majority of the property can be done by bringing a dozer in and just clearing some of the drill roads and getting in there. Obviously, we would need permits for that, but that can be done.
All right, and I think I'm just running through any more, Sophie?
Yeah, there's 2 last questions. And I know you touched on this. Who does your property acquisition and prospecting?
We have a gentleman, actually, the Dr. Michael Feinstein, who wrote up who's our QP and was the co-author of our 43-101 technical report, which, by the way, you can find on the homepage of our website. He also has a staking crew and company. So it was amazing to be able to use him, having the geologist doing all the staking as well. So it was great. Just to let you know, it costs to stake a claim costs about $550 US all in to stake a claim.
Okay, and then last question, use of proceeds for your financing.
As I mentioned, we plan to go public, and that will cost probably about an additional $250,000-$300,000. We have due diligence that we're doing. We have geophysics that we're doing. So that'll take up a lot of that. And then also, as Paul pointed out, applying for the permits, there's fees to do all of that stuff as well.
Okay, and I think that's it from my end, Paul.
Yep, gentlemen, great presentation. You covered just about everything. I wrote one comment here. You're a small fish in a big pond, but you appear to be growing daily or weekly as you keep passing. So, congratulations to both of you and to the management. It looks like you're onto something here. Copper is cooperating with you with the price, obviously, and the need for copper going forward. So thanks again to both of you for the presentation. Very well done.
I just want to add one last thing. Daryl had touched on that there was a report done by the University of Arizona and the Arizona Geological Survey. It's on the front of our website as well, on the homepage. It was just completed in January, and it's the whole history of the Globe Miami area. And it talks about all the geology of the area too. It mentions us in there, and some of the slides that I presented today are from that report. It's an amazing read in conjunction with our 43-101 technical report on the website.
Excellent. Again, thank you both, gentlemen. Thanks everyone for joining in today. We'll keep you posted over the next few months as they progress and get listed and everything else. Take care and have a good rest of the day, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.